late. Don't have too much for you in this slow time, of course, for folks. Hope everybody had a good Christmas and a good holiday. We'll start with some of the travel numbers. Pensacola International Airport, we had about 61,000 passengers during the week of Christmas, and that's a 2% increase from 2024. And everything in terms of the terminal continues to move along, move forward. No interruptions or delays in current operations from anything of that sort. Holiday closures and sanitations. The offices and facilities at City Hall will be closed on Thursday in observance of New Year's Day. The Osceola Golf Course will remain open for regular hours, and then Roger Scott Tennis Center will be closed on Wednesday the 31st and the 1st, and will be open on Friday, January 2nd. And just like last week, if you're a Thursday sanitation customer, then you will get your service one day earlier on Wednesday, the 31st. So you will get your service tomorrow. So make sure you put that can out a day early. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, as it was last week, those customers will see no change on their days, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. No new changes significant with what you heard last week as far as Palafox goes. But just as a reminder for everybody, we continue to try to spread the word, share the information that the outdoor seating will be removed. Obviously, we're speaking directly to the downtown business owners about this. Will be the outdoor seating removed by Friday, January 2nd, and then cars are going to be asked to be removed from South Palafox by 8 p.m. on Sunday, January 4th, to allow fencing and everything to be ready to go on the 5th. So none of that, again, has changed from what you heard, and we still have an incentivized target date of May 24th. And then, of course, all businesses on Palafox will remain open and accessible on the sidewalk. And we finalize all of the many thousands of feet, a few thousand feet of signage that will be going all along the fence. That will be directories when you get to so for example, if you were walking from Jefferson over to Palafox on Romana on the fencing, there'll be a directory to send you right to this place, left to this place on each block. So we try to make it crystal clear for everybody that not only is it open, but how you can get to navigate getting to your favorite small businesses. And of course, the new palafox.com is up and going. And then one other reminder, about the January 13th public forum at the Sanger for the 3 police chief finalists. And we are certainly encouraging the community to participate in that, either by showing up for 5:30 on January 13th. But you can also go to our city website or our social media if you want to submit a question. And that deadline to submit is on January 5th at 5 p.m. So we'll remind you one more time when we get back to the new year about that. But you can submit anytime, and if you aren't able to make it. So that is everything that I've got. Happy to take.
Mayor, was the decision on the free parking? Is it going to be unlimited free parking?
Yes.
Okay, that's final.
Yes.
Okay.
24-hour parking. Final with the asterisk that
It could change.
When I believe, I'm speculating here. When I believe that there will be complaints of people squatting in parking spaces, we will do our best to continue to be as nimble as possible and as flexible as possible. The whole reason we're doing it, and certainly the city, that's at a cost to the city, no doubt about it. The whole reason we're doing it is to do what's right for the small businesses downtown and to make it more attractive during a temporary time to bring people down. That's our primary goal. So if it's whatever's the best way to do that is what we're going to do. And if we end up changing our mind, or our downtown businesses change our mind, we're leaning on DIB and Adrian and our communication team to help us with that. We start to hear a lot of concerns. We'll happily take a look at that again, or modify maybe some of the spaces, go to 2 hour, something like that. But we'll start with free, because that's what the business owners told us, and we'll go from there.
Mayor Reeves, how do you feel? I know there's a lot of discourse not only with those small business owners within the city council. How do you feel? We're a little bit under a weekend project your thoughts as mayor, where the project is now, and also kind of your relationship with those business owners. Do you feel it's maybe gotten a little bit better since kind of all the craziness started?
Yeah, I mean, I feel fine. Whether we were to do this project today or 2 years from now or 5 years from now, there's going to be inconvenience there. So we either would have to decide to never work on Palafox Street ever again. So long that we wouldn't inconvenience anybody, or that at some point you're going to have to take a bite at the apple. You're going to have to do that. And I think most business owners understand that. I think like many situations, almost all situations in this, getting the correct information and accurate information about exactly what's going on, I think really was helpful for folks. And so, no, listen, I feel good about it. I feel very confident that when this project's done, and we certainly feel good about it being done on time, that you would have a situation where people might forget about the complexities of how we got started. And I use the baseball stadium as a good example of that. If you look at the vote before the stadium and you look at the vote after the stadium, you can't find any of those 42% of people that didn't want it. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean, that's what I hope. Is I hope that when we're all done and we're looking at this safer, more infrastructure ready for the next generation, better for pedestrians, better for the businesses long term, that when we look at the finished product, that some of the concern and understandable anxiety about change that starts to go away. And I think one really for citizens, not just business owners, for citizens, I think one thing that's very important to understand, and that's why we keep continuing to discuss it, is the fact that the sidewalks will be open. And if you've been to New Orleans at any point, I don't remember the last time I went to the French Quarter where there wasn't the street closed and sidewalks open. As a matter of fact, I think they got about $118 million worth of streets open right now. And I don't know what kind of mitigation they're doing for businesses, but I can guarantee that it's a fraction of what we are attempting to do. So to your question, what I can say is I certainly feel confident that we've done everything that we can from a communication standpoint, from a mitigation standpoint to do right by these businesses. And I would put our effort and our resume, so to speak, of what we're trying to do on Palafox Street up against any other infrastructure project that's out there in any other city. I don't think, and I've been to many of those. I grew up going to New Orleans. I've been there probably hundreds of times. And I don't think that any of those businesses on Decatur that are under construction right now, or on Royal Street that are under construction right now, had any of these conversations. I think it was, here you go, here's a construction project, good luck. And we certainly didn't do that. So I feel confident what we've put forward. I feel we're as prepared as possible. And, I think what I ask citizens is continue to support these small businesses. That's what's important here, is we want them to survive and thrive through this, so they get to reap the benefit, the great benefit of better stormwater infrastructure, better pedestrian accessibility, better ADA accessibility. That will all be good for those businesses.
The Mardi Gras folks have sent out a release about a street party type of event associated with the celebration. This has made the folks getting ready to work on Palafox Street a little bit nervous. What do you say to those concerns? And do you think any of these street party activities could be moved over to Jefferson Street where the parade route is?
The way I understand them is that it's sidewalk oriented. It's not, obviously where something in the street. But look, that's the give and take of working on a project in this location in a high traffic area. But number one, that's why it's valuable to be working on a high traffic area. It's a place where people want to be. And so I appreciate and applaud the efforts of the Mardi Gras folks to say, hey, how do we think of something outside the box to go help these small businesses? And I hope I continue to see some of that. And I'm very appreciative of creative ideas to say, hey, maybe there's a way we can, through this difficult time and complex time, that we can help continue to support our small businesses. I know I'll be, actually, my girlfriend and I were walking on Palafox this weekend, and I was like, we're going to be eating down here a lot. The next 5 months. We already do. We like to get down there, but, just for the same reason, I think all of us need to step up and say, how can we be more intentional about helping everybody down there? And listen, a big construction project, they're pros. They're going to figure out how to navigate, dealing with other complex issues I've got issues to work through as the mayor of the city. They've got issues to work through as the construction managers of this city. So of this big project. So I feel confident we'll be in place.
Here, sort of a seasonal question, year in review stuff.
Yep.
Two-part question. What with the city, the mayor, the executive branch here, what are you most pleased with in the past year? And conversely, what wakes you up at night saying, I wish I could do a do-over?
Oh man, everything it keeps me up at night. Up at 4 in the morning. People are like, man, what? Yeah.
Knock off the martini.
Yeah, well, no, I wake up too early for that. But no, listen, I feel like I'm really pleased with how many projects that we were able to get going in the air. And what I mean is if you just look at the change in procurement, I think if you just use that as the barometer, the amount of things that were procured that went to RFP, went to RFI, and I don't have those exact numbers, but if you just look at especially the last 2 years, 18 months maybe, it's astronomically larger than in years past. I know at one point it was double. We had as many, and that might have been 24 or some subset of 25. But I think what we've done is we've primed ourselves for an extremely busy construction year in 2026. So we've gotten, our goal was to get the planes in the air, no terminal pun intended, but at the airport, obviously January completing, having American Magic complete Project Mave, the private investment that's happening at scale in the city, the demolition of Baptist Hospital. I think there's lots of things to be proud of that now we're going to see executed through 2026. So, I think if any one administration or any one city staff had one or two of these projects happen over a 3-year span, it would be something to be proud of. And we got a lot of work to do. We're not done, but to have 4, 5, 6 of these projects going and well on their way to completion or to be completed in 2026, that doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't happen by magic. It happens by a lot of hardworking folks here in the city to get us through all those processes, get us finding funding, getting it executed and ready to go. So I think we've worked really hard, on that. I think to answer your question candidly about, I feel we probably took, of all the years I've been here, more inadvertent things that were kind of out of our control, whether it be an audit, whether it be things that weren't primarily decisions of the city that came and found us. But as I've shared with another media member, there is no feeling sorry for ourselves, or that's part of the gig. So, we continue to push through those things and do the best that we can. And so long as we're working hard and we focus on urgency, and we focus on public safety and housing and jobs and all the things that we said that we do since I started in this job, then everything will be fine. So, so I think there's been some of those little things, but they're minor in relation. And again, that's if we can't fight through those things and those distractions and all that, then I'm in the wrong job. So we'll continue to do that and continue to push forward and do great for the city, I hope.
So just to follow up on that, Mayor, so you evaluate performance here in terms of actions taken, projects, RFIs, RPIs, things that you can count, quantify. In regards to the city strategic plan, though, are you hitting those marks evenly, or are there some that are falling behind that you'd like to get caught up on?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. I think every year of the existence of the strategic plan, there's going to be years where item 1, affordable housing, is going to get more attention than item 7, right? I think it would be impossible for a city administration to say, we're going to float the tide up on all 8 of these things all at the same time, right? Or all in equal trajectory. I can confidently say when you look at the list of all 8, we have taken action to support or improve all of them in some way. But of course, the intensity is going to be different. Plus, I mean, ones like, for example, supporting arts and culture compared to supporting housing, even those, when you compare those, are very different in tactic, very different in priority, things like that. So do I feel extremely confident that we've moved the needle in some way in every single one of those? Yes. Is there going to be a change in intensity, a change in volume, perhaps of one over another? Of course, and I think that'll happen again in 26, and it'll happen again in 27 and 28. And so because we're trying, what we want is we want to vision what our citizens see as a prosperous future for their city. So we, for the first time, we're able to answer that question with that. So now moving forward, we have to balance keeping our eyes on the prize of those 8 things. But priorities change, opportunities change. For example, if grant funding comes in for item number 4, well, then it should be our job to say, well, if we can get this really moving the needle, then maybe we focus our priority there. So I think it's a living document, as we said, throughout the entire process. Very much so. It will continue to be a living document. But it is the obligation of the city, the obligation of me, as I said, through the whole process, as the executor, the implementer of this plan, because we have lots of plans, and the question is, how do we implement them? And but it is our job to keep our eyes on the prize and make sure that we're trying to move all of this forward. To give an example of that, one that is going to take time, but I think maybe you'll see perhaps with the land development code change, of course, that will happen, and those changes will begin to be proposed in 2026. So one about making kind of community nodes that aren't downtown. That's one that I really like, but that's not as easy as some of the other ones in terms, where do you put it? And so that's going to require more intentionality, more thought. So naturally, that one's going to be a little further behind another one of the items. So, but it is our job to keep it in front of us and keep looking at opportunities to be able to do that.
Well, there's no organized New Year's Eve celebration. Do you know if PPD is still planning on, enhancing security?
You'd have to ask Mike in terms of raw numbers. I don't, if there's more officers on it or not. What I can tell you is we obviously have a protocol in place on any busy type events that are either staffed up strategically and things like that. So we have no hindrances on that. We aren't looking for folks to fill positions on New Year's Eve. I know our team will be ready to go, but for specifics on what they're willing to share, certainly strategically.
Are they doing fireworks downtown again?
We've been notified. I believe Seville Tower is doing some fireworks off of their building. Midnight, you have to ask Rick, since he's in that building.
Sparklers.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Not sure if it's on the first floor or the 12th, but but no organized events. I think they're just going to be shooting fireworks from Seville Tower midnight. Okay. Obviously, what I can say from a PPD to the previous question standpoint, we are obviously aware of that, and while there's no official event happening, we understand that if there's fireworks going off on a tall building downtown, then our folks are going to be fully aware of that and react accordingly.
Man, I've got a couple open items that I'd like to try to cover at the end of the year. The Bluffs public hearing. I mean, you had a public workshop the 22nd of October. You had a public survey. Where is that now?
I'll give you we'll provide you a up to the day update. What we know is we finally, I think maybe in the last 30 days, we're able to get the grant funds freed up between, remember, Conservation Florida, I believe DEP and us. So I in terms of up to the day, I don't know that anything substantively is different other than this. We've completed the long wait of being able to have the $2 million freed up.
But what about
HDR is on.
What about the plan itself?
Yeah, HDR is on, and they were part of that meeting in October. Right. So we had started obviously the design and budgeting process, generally taking community feedback and saying, what can and can't be done. Again, I'm not up to the day on where that sits, but I see Adrian back there. Do you want to give an update? I'll let Adrian tell you where it sits today.
It's essentially what he's saying. We have made a little bit of progress in terms of the granting agencies, and there's a laundry list of items that have to be completed for the notice of commencement. So we were able to have that kind of preemptive public input session to get the ball rolling. HDR has all of that data. They have been compiling it and generating it into something kind of synthesized for us to work with. And right now we're working on all of those notice of commencement items, like a boundary survey, making sure everything is well documented for the granting agency so that we can actually proceed and plan another community input event to kind of further flesh out what the community wants to see.
You know, Mayor, I know earlier this year you were sitting, Adrian, you could understand.
Yeah.
Just for a second, I promise. But the hope was in the second half of 2026, some of it would be completed. Are we going to be on that timeline still?
Well, I think when you've asked that before, I've probably answered the same way and not
Hopeful. I know it was
right.
optimistic.
Because in other words, for example, if the decision is to put primitive trails in, well, primitive trails is different than structure.
Right.
So it's kind of a chicken egg problem at this point to say, well, depends on how substantive the structure is going to be. If they're building the Taj Mahal up on Scenic Highway, then it might go longer. If it's primitive trails and some pretty basic things that end up being prescribed, then it might be able to come along easier.
So what do we tell the public as far as when will we be able to give them some sort of timeline? What's that going to look like? You know, just they're not going to hold you to it. You know, they never get upset. So,
Right.
But you know, sort of a timeline when we can start seeing what this is going to look and people can expect to see movement.
Yeah. So to put it in perspective, we do have a 6-month time clock to get all those notice of commencement documents in order. So we are working a little bit off the granting agencies, timeline, but there will be movement in 2026. We'll have more community engagement input. Also looking at those survey results. I believe the survey is still live. If it's not, we'll probably maybe tailor it a little more and reopen it. We are leaning on HDR's expertise in terms of assessing the current conditions to determine what can be done or what should be done with the amount of money that we have. So we are, assessing the current structure, and like the mayor said, demolition to get that out of there, maybe put primitive trails in, or maybe there are some repairs that can be done. So we're really leaning on HDR to give us an idea of what's feasible there.
Does Conservation Florida approve the final plan? Is that where we just have to get the document?
That's correct. They'll need to review everything that we produce along the way. We'll need their seal of approval.
So we
too.
could be as much as 6 months off before something happens.
The intent is to get the notice of commencement documents all in order, and we're working on them right now and getting those approved so that we're not, wasting any time. But we do have to do that critical step before any real movement can happen.
Thank you.
And just to put a bow on that, obviously the complex when you find grant dollars that we wouldn't otherwise be able to afford,
Right.
it comes with these. And no one's doing anything wrong. Certainly, we appreciate DEP and Conservation Florida.
It's 20 acres. So
you
it's
get three
a lot.
government entities together. It's going to take some time, and I think every bit of this process is going to be a little slower than if we were doing it with general fund dollars on our own. Not because we want it to be, but to help. But laugh to myself. Fair point. What can we tell the public? Well, we can start with telling them that we have the funding, because I still get I ping once a month, once a week on why we didn't get funding for Bayless Park. So you can entertain them with that and let them know that it actually has been funded, and more to come. And so, but nothing's changed with me. We're as urgent to get that done. It's been closed and sitting empty for long enough, and we've even had conversations about getting some physical signage out there, because even that, I think, on our side, what we should be better responsible for is, instead of just orange fencing up, hey, QR code to share your thoughts and all those things, so we can narrate to folks that are driving by, not just hope that they're reading the newspaper or reading online.
Where's the city with the Chappie James Memorial Plaza or whatever it's called now?
The last update, do you want to give an update, Dave? Sure.
I had about within the last 2 weeks, I had an initial, in my view, capacity meeting with Mr. Dosev, another representative. Can't recall his name. Was the accountant. And they basically wanted to sort of, I think, reintroduce on Mr. Dosev from years past, and he presented another potential agreement that where I then took to the city attorney who's reviewing it right now. I don't know if there's been much of a change. We're basically re-engaging with those, so nothing real substantive to report other than we did get some outreach from them.
Okay, and we're at the stage that the city's going to need to have a new agreement. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So that's
Yeah.
all right. Let's see what else I can get called up. I'm sorry. All right, now this was for you. Last week, you mentioned about having a collaborative approach forward with the trust and the CRA money. I know you were reluctant to really kind of name what the dollar amount is, but can you give us or give the public some sort of view of what that collaborative approach is going to look like? What that
Yeah,
is going to be?
and it's not number one. We still have some finance calculating, and I'll tell you what they're calculating. So I'm happy to share that. And my hesitancy is obviously this is a conversation with CRA too. So the interesting part of this is the executives are meeting. What the trust and the city's executives are meeting, but both of them need support of the CRA and the trust themselves. So we want to be mindful of that, and that's why we're trying to not come say that in absolutes this is what I can tell you. What we've generally proposed is to say, hey, listen, you guys have supported a direct city function with Parks and Rec in significant dollar amounts. We're this year we're on track to spend all of that down, and it has had a significant impact on our after school programs. And those are direct dollars, not just dollars that were spent in the city. To me, that's a little different than saying direct dollars that were given to the city.
It's funding your after school program.
Correct.
Right.
So I think a fair, equitable arrangement would be what is owed less what was spent directly by the city, not other folks in the city, and waiving penalties and fines. I mean, that's ultimately, so I'm not going to speak for them and what they want to do, or I'm not going to speak for our CRA board, but I think a fair way to say is we want to put a child care access program with the remaining dollars owed to the CRA less what was given directly to the city. It would be, and what 1.4, $1.5 million range, I would say, but what we're having to calculate is dollars expended, and also remember the award for the Parks and Rec actually travels over a calendar year because it's July to July. So when I say we're doing math, we're trying to figure out what that deduction of City of Pensacola dollars would be that we agree upon in terms of what has actually physically been given to the city.
So do you project that the city will make a sole source request for a program?
Yes. Yeah, I think it will
other
be
than a blank check. You'll
Correct.
say it's going to go for
correct.
child care.
And so I think there's two things for us to agree upon. And when I say us, I don't mean Lindsay and I mean CRA and me and Lindsay and the board. And there's two fundamental things to agree on. One is what's the amount, and two is what is the specificity and or vagueness of what that sole source ask is. We don't want it to be vague. I've been pretty clear. Now the CRA could approve or disapprove of it. I've been pretty clear about what the overall intent should be. But I think it's prudent of us to give ourselves some flexibility. I mean, things change. Real estate prices go through the roof or in the tank, or I certainly don't want to be overly limiting to our CRA board to say it's got to be used on Tuesdays when it's partly cloudy for these buildings. We don't want to do that. But in spirit of what I've said this entire time, I certainly respect the trust board to say, hey, the reason that this is a good collaboration and partnership is we're not just going to go spend it on anything we want. We want it to still meet the mission of what the trust wants to do. So I feel extremely confident we're going to find that happy medium on the request side, and I hope that what we're proposing, saying, hey, look, this is what's owed to the CRA. Here's deduct dollars that the city of Pensacola has already received, even though it's in a different program.
Right. It
And
seems to fit their framework, similar to what they did to the county, where they tried to specifically have it towards youth. But yours will be more specific.
yeah, and listen, if I didn't think we had any issues with childcare,
Right,
maybe
right.
we'd be having a different discussion. But fortunately or unfortunately, we have enough need in this city to help the youth of this city that we're not going to get lost in arguing what our liberties should be as it pertains to those dollars, because we've got so many needs that we can help fill anyway. And that's been kind of the genesis of the whole childcare thing, is to say someone's got to do it inside the city limits. And so that's the frame, to answer your question, that's the framework of where we're going. And we'll have obviously exact to the penny dollar amounts. Soon.
Going back to the fireworks for New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
but the DIB, this seems to be a small step toward a New Year's Eve revival. You mentioned earlier in the year it would take private funds to bring it back. As we approach New Year's, have you heard any more interest in that from anyone?
Yeah, and let me be clear. That's not DIB is aware of it. I don't know if it was a DIB function or if it was private. I'm not sure. We weren't necessarily involved in that. But listen, what I know is it is extremely complex and extremely difficult, both logistically and financially, to put on parades, to put on any type of event like that. It can be done. But one of the amazing things and why the city of Pensacola is so great is there will be people flood, even when it's 40 something degrees, there's going to be people flooded downtown already. So I think, honestly, it's the same as gallery night. I mean, let's use gallery night as an example. Gallery night began because it was an attractor to bring people downtown. The reason DIB doesn't do gallery night anymore, and it's now been taken up by private businesses, is because gallery night kind of saw it play out and say, well, man, we're so busy downtown. Do we even need, this was supposed to be a driver of downtown. I think I could probably make the same case about New Year's Eve. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when it wasn't nearly as vibrant downtown, it was an attractor. Well, now we're full downtown on New Year's Eve, no matter what, whether we do things or not. So I'm no fun sponge. I like fireworks as much as the next person, or drone shows, or any that. I'm always willing to entertain that. But as the steward of the taxpayer dollar, I've got to be aware too that when we're looking at $100,000 a parade for police and fire and all that, and we're talking about property tax reform, and we're talking about all these different other circumstances that come into, what does the budget look like next year? When you're already very, very busy downtown, that doesn't make it an extremely high priority for us. I know the county is interested in it, and I'm always open to that. But my conversation would always be, well, tell them, let's not forget about the hidden cost of the $50,000, $100,000 in police overtime, fire. We got to drive public works trucks out there to block roads. Safety changed, as we all know, unfortunately, almost a year ago in New Orleans, and how we made our parade safer, and I'm very proud of. But with that comes greater expense too. So I think it gets forgotten. We think of the fun stuff, and I don't blame people for doing it. We want to see the fireworks. That's great. But there's that hidden major logistical and financial expense that comes with an event like that. And when we're already pretty busy and pretty full downtown, it just makes it a little bit less of a priority. But I would always be open. I've said this since I've been asked about the Pelican drop and everything like that. I'm not conceptually against it, but the idea that the city would be logistically, financially handling the entire thing, I don't know that the need is necessarily there for our city. If there was a county, city, whoever, TDC, whoever would be wanting to catalyze that, I certainly would be open to any conversation about that, but we can't. That's not something that I think would be financially responsible for the city to be handling only on their own.
Has a decision been made for the landscaping company who trimmed that tree at Belvedere Park?
Yes, I know there's two things have happened. I know one, the designated, it was not a heritage tree. Through our investigation, it was not a heritage tree. We had our folks go out and look at that. I certainly appreciate they reached out and apologized. The leadership of the company, and that it was, as we expected, not malicious intent. It was a mistake made by one of their employees. So those were two important developments. Obviously a heritage tree and the fine that's associated with that is different than the next the protected version. So what I can tell you is we will do to the extent of whatever the rule is. I'm not sure that that's final yet. It might be to check, but or we get a Dominique check for you. But if there's an ability to levy a fine, we will. If there isn't an ability to levy a fine because it's not a certain tree, then obviously we're not going to do that. But I do appreciate again them reaching out, acknowledging the mistake, and you know, it certainly again I don't sit here thinking that was anything malicious. I think it was just a mistake made by an employee, so we do at least have a better understanding of that. So, but that does not mean again if there's a fine or if there's some action that needs to be taken or should be taken by the city, we will take it to that extent. And if we can't, then we won't. But let us follow up on exactly where that landed. I know there were some emails going back and forth. I just may not have seen the last one. That's why I want to speak with full certainty on that.
Mayor, any update with the Patti family and the easement down there?
That's funny, actually.
You still got a big hole in the road on B Street right
Yeah.
there. Man.
Yeah, B's all repaved actually, kind of not at the south end.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, down by the entrance. Ironically, I had a chance to chat with a member of the Patti family Saturday. So, and I remain in the same neutral position that I did when I got here, which is we've been working on this for many, many years. And what I sincerely hope is that this step that had to be taken by the city forces some proactivity. Like almost every litigation, no one really wants litigation. No one wants to deal with lawyers. I can say that as the only person in my family who wasn't a lawyer. But no one wants to deal with that, right? I mean, and so what I could say right now, and I'm certainly not going to speak for the other side. Our goal is to bring to closure the best stormwater outcome we can get, and I believe that that family members have a similar goal. So I hope that we can continue to kind of move this forward and find what those alternative scenarios are. We are still open to that, as we always have been. So my last interaction with them was positive, and again, I'm certainly optimistic that we can continue to move this forward and maybe land in a place that's best for all parties. And just as a refresher, the only reason we had to take that step is we had gone so many years with no movement or no action, and it was just something that we had to do. And so, but I feel positive about it, and again, it's in the hands of attorneys right now. But I hope we land on a positive outcome.
You mentioned alternative scenarios. Are we talking in terms of what exactly do you mean by
Yeah, I think the one that's been around that predates me was a scenario where you'd actually be able to take it south down through the side parking lot of Joe Patti's towards the water, just basically due south of B Street. And I'm oversimplifying that, John. So you'll have to look. I'll have to pitch you the exact drawing, but there's a couple zigzags in there. But ultimately, going down through there, I know there's been conversations over many years of even because the pipe would already be there to even provide some drainage in the parking lot, which wouldn't be a requirement, but the pipe would already be there. But just a symbol of the collaboration that I think the city's position has always been, again, predating me, that we want to come up with something that is net positive for a great organization and a great business in our city, and something that's extreme net positive for the city. So, taking the pipe down B Street versus the easement contention, I think for both parties, finding a way to do it due south of B Street is better. It's just a matter of working through family members and logistics and easements of trapezoids of property left for years and with 7 or 8 members on it, So it's that type of stuff that I think we're dealing with. It's not contention, and it's not. I don't believe that either party believes that going in front of the building is the best option. But right now, it's we believe is our legal right to do. And unfortunately, we just haven't been able over years of time to work out the other one. So, I can't speak for them, obviously, but what I would say is I do think that there's daylight to be found trying this alternate solution. And if nothing else, I hope we look back and we don't have to litigate anything. And maybe just this step was the positive catalyst to try to get some urgency behind the solution that's best for him. So I still feel confident that there is something out there that's good for all parties, and hope to hear more from them.
The selection of a Baptist site designer fell off the grid earlier this month. What's being done to get folks comfortable with the Bayou District Group? And have you spoken to Councilman Wiggins since that meeting? Has there been any interest expressed by any other group or firm about designing the Baptist project?
Not from me. And yes, I've spoken to Councilman Wiggins. Certainly I allow him to speak for him on what his intent is and what he wants to do. My position has been, at the moment, we've got a monstrosity of a project ahead of us for the next 18 months, which is to demolish the building. And one thing I feel real positive about in community feedback is that no one wants to keep the building. So, or an abandoned hospital in the neighborhood. So if we all can agree on that, 100% consensus on something, let's not leave an abandoned hospital. Then we're just we'll go head first into that as we, I think fencing's up now around the building, and we got plenty to do there. If council members have any specifics or anything that they want to do or anything they want to bring forward or bring back, I'm open to those conversations when they come up. But as I said, we kind of brought forward what we had talked about for quite a while, and from a timeline standpoint. And obviously that it wasn't approved, it was pulled. And so we just turned our focus into something that I think gets lost in this, which is a $13 million demolition taking place only a couple of years after someone left. If someone's done it faster in the United States, I'm not saying I don't have the data on that, but if someone's taken down a abandoned hospital quicker, funded the way that it was funded, then I haven't heard of it yet. So that was a miracle in and of itself. Thanks to our staff, our grants office, Senator Broxton, so many folks that helped make that happen. And so we got a lot on our plate already, and we'll re-engage that when I get a better understanding of what council gives specifically, not just Councilman Wiggins because you brought him up, but any councilman, any feedback that they have or any direction they want to go.
Mayor, do you think that there was a lot of misinformation involved in who Bayou District is, what their track record was? I've seen that reported here locally that, I don't know, one of the council members was saying that the public speakers at the meeting where it's pulled back were mischaracterizing who they were and what they had accomplished.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do. I mean, there's lots of allegations flying around unfounded in that meeting. And certainly that I don't see or never have seen as the avenue to engage in things that aren't really backed with fact. And I'd certainly challenge whether it's the media or anybody out there to go vet those things. Because I think of what happens a lot of times is for some reason somebody can say something in a council meeting, and then honestly, it's probably partially my fault, is that I come in and react to baseless speculation in here, which creates some type of news story when really in reality it was baseless to begin with. Maybe I should just say, hey, let's fact check it. And if it's, but obviously the displacement argument is complete lack of fact, 100%. That is not factual. That they weren't even involved in that process until 18 months after the decision to displace by the federal government that had taken place. So I'm not here to do their point by point. And certainly they can do a better job, or Travis or whoever can do a better job of explaining their position. All I'm merely trying to do is go through a process of starting community engagement. And I would make an argument that generally we feel like the community engagement was pretty well accepted in policy meetings, 32 meetings. In a minority community around an area that certainly obviously different. It's not housing. It's not every project's going to be different, but an area that actually did displace people. Baptist abandoned. Nobody lives in the hospital right now. So that, but in 1972 or 67 to 72 area, when 18 city blocks were taken out for the interstate, people were displaced. So some similar sensitivities, I believe, to the Baptist Project. Ironically, if you look at the timeline and the plan for this is no different. As a matter of fact, I would actually argue that Hollis T. Williams, because the community engagement was an aspect of the design, that it was actually one step quicker. In other words, the design company also was simultaneously doing community engagement. This is, and I think the biggest misnomer of this entire misperception, this entire issue is the confusion around what Bayou District's being hired to do. Bayou District is not being hired to be the developer. They're not hiring to even design anything. All they are merely being hired to do is to start the community engagement. So you look at two projects in kind of a similar timeline, one that I feel has been generally, considered positive in terms of the intensity and volume of community feedback moving forward. And then we moved to this project, and we weren't even going to design yet. And there's a lot of presumptions that, and I think I can sympathize with one part of the misperception, because Bayou District Foundation's reputation, so to speak, is a very similar mixed income community. I think that increased confusion around, well, since that's what they did, that's exactly what they're going to do here. That's not what they were hired to do. They weren't hired to just do another Bayou District Foundation. They're hired to engage the community on what the community wants. And so I think that was understandably misperceived. And then I think, to your original question, there were many things that were intentionally misperceived in that council meeting, about us, about me, about them. But again, we're not here to, have a pity party. We'll continue to do what we think is the right thing to do and attempt to do what we think is the right thing to do, because that's always guided us well. Is we only want what's right for everybody in the community, and so we'll take a step back and kind of reassess how we want to handle that moving forward, and focus on the demolition.
So pragmatically, Mayor, do you think Bayou District is tainted to the point now that you're going to have more difficulty going forward? You're running for re-election all of a sudden. You've got opponents that are looking for issues, or can you clean this up and get it back to where it needs to be in terms of no more RFP?
I mean, the way I look at it is, I brought forward what we always said we were going to do throughout the community meetings we had at Baptist, through every time I've stood here, every time we did presentations at the city or the county. We stuck to the timeline that we promised, and it was built around the idea that we wanted community engagement to begin before they saw tangible things happening in demolition. That was my promise to the community, is that I want a conversation to start about what will take its place before it not cause any concern over seeing something coming down without having any understanding of what might be going back in its place. And if we were off base on that, or that was considered too aggressive, because what I know is robust community engagement takes a long time. It isn't going to be a 3-month process or a 6-month process. So we, as you could probably understand from my position, we wanted to start the community feeling heard and engaged as quickly as we could around the demolition, so they weren't seeing progress in terms of a building going down without feeling like people were included. So that was the timeline we had for well over a year, and that's the timeline we've stuck to. That wasn't supported by the council, right? That's part of the job, so I guess you would have to ask the voters of that if they feel like Bayou District's tainted or not. That's what we brought forward. Another detail that gets left out pretty often is that it was the only responsive bid, so they weren't even selected over anybody else. There was 3 going into the meetings, and so that's why you didn't hear a discussion about, well, Mayor, why don't you consider the other person? Well, there is no other person in the RFP. That Bayou District was the only responsive bid. So the 2 choices are hire them or scrap it all together. Both are viable options, but there isn't going to a number 2 or a number 3 on the list, because there isn't a number 2 or number 3. So I know that gives headwinds to the misperception that we've hand selected them, but nobody else was in. There could have been 50 companies that were in, Again, that's why I keep saying I'm going to go back to what we can control, what we can focus on, which is this demolition needs to happen. We want to make sure everybody's safe. We want to make sure it's done right. And so we're turning our focus and attention to that, and we'll let the other things play out. But I'm not the person that gets to decide what the perception or misperceptions around Patti District are, unfortunately. And if the council wants to bring something back forward, I think that question probably is more suited for them to say if it's too tarnished or if it's something that they feel like they want to bring back.
Were you surprised at the reaction? That tent folded pretty quickly and not much wind going on except in the speaker's podium.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I don't think, I think our track record of getting approved votes at council over 3 years has been pretty good. And while people perceive that as somehow people not wanting to argue or not wanting to contest us, actually, I take a lot of pride in that because there's a lot of legwork that happens in this building to make sure that all 7 members understand what's going on, that all 7 members have the information. And I can tell you way more often than people think, what is brought forward with my name as a sponsor has lots of with individual meetings saying, hey, Councilman Wiggins, Councilman Breyer, how do you feel about this particular issue? And it's something that we may say, hey, you know what, we didn't think of that. And that's part of what I think, the not having an ego about we think we've got the best idea, but like trying to bring these things forward. So I think our success over approved votes has a lot to do with people feeling communicated with and heard, and us being nimble and flexible to make sure that that it's something that we can all get behind. So obviously, I guess to your question, any time that something is pulled or approved, it ends up as a surprise, and certainly things said from the dais Monday and Thursday were the first time we heard it, from the dais, and so if we'll always look in the mirror if there's a way that we can improve processes of communication with our council members. I certainly don't want them ever hearing something for the first time from the dais. I think they deserve that respect, and certainly our not even me, just our staff, works hard on these things for months and months of time. If there's any avenue that we can open where we have a better understanding before we go into the arena and hear something for the first time, that we'll do anything to help advocate and continue to make sure that the collaboration. And so I've always said this to any of the 7 council members. Voting something up or down, I understand is going to be part of the process. Not everyone is going to agree with everything I do, nor should I expect that. But I don't want it to be on a lack of information or a lack of communication. So if everybody understands the issue and then they vote no, that's part of it. That's part of my job. Not having all the information is where we've got to look at ourselves. I got to look at me personally and make sure that I'm doing a good enough job of communicating it. And certainly I hope that they look at it that way too, to make sure that they have all the information when they make their decision. So we'll see what happens. And again, we got enough to do. We're not crying our cornflakes over this. We're gonna get going and go get demolition done. And
Is the demo timeline okay?
yeah, everything I've heard is similar. Again, I know the fencing is up, I believe, now, and but it's starting first part of January. So I have not heard any delay in that at this point.
Mayor, one last question on the 14th Avenue and Gregory Street. Last month, the city was going to be putting together a formal request of FDOT. Where does that stand?
Yes, I sent. Are you talking about the letter itself, or where their progress is on that?
I'll take both.
Okay. Well, we'll send you. I sent an email. It's been a couple weeks now. We'll forward it to you. I sent an email to Tim Smith, Secretary of District 3, and that he had notified me that they'd actually, which I appreciate, we're reading the news over here too, and that they had actually started a review process internally in Chipley to look at what some options might be. So obviously I've not seen that report yet, probably wouldn't expect it around this time of year, but yes, our concerns were formalized. I certainly made all of our staff and bandwidth available, from Public Works to police to anything they need from us to make sure. And so you'll see that in the letter, but we'll get that to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you guys. Have a good New Year.